So I don't know about you all, but our family has decided we need to get out of the house. And Kara had the brilliant idea of getting out and going to the beach for the day. So here we are at Van Buren State Park. It's absolutely beautiful. The sun is starting to peek out. Our dog is soaking wet. I'll get a shot of him if I can here in a minute. And the kids are having a blast. And it was time. And there is just something incredibly renewing and refreshing about being out here in the water, out in God's creation, and being out in a place where we don't have to worry about things like coronavirus for a few moments. And as I'm out here, I just want to offer some thoughts about water. We know in the beginning of scriptures, when God created the heavens and the earth, it started with God hovering over the formless void, and then God called water into existence with just a word. We know that God used water to free and to liberate the Hebrew people out of the hands of Egypt when they crossed the waters of the Red Sea. We know that Jesus was formed in the water of a womb. We remember the story of Noah and the great flood. Water just has such this prominent and important role throughout all of Scripture. And water is such an important thing in our lives. It's the most important thing for us to have access to. And I've been really aware as the church over the last week and a half has been reaching out to some of the more vulnerable members of our community, just how important water is to all of us, because people have raised concern, is my water clean? Is my water safe? And in town, for most of us, our water is safe, and yet it's a real concern. And so we've also been trying to think about and find ways to get fresh bottled water to folks who need that kind of water. And the real reason that I'm really thinking about all this water is because I'm also reflecting on Jesus's fifth word from the cross, which was simply, I thirst, or I'm thirsty. We've been talking about the 7 last words of Jesus throughout this season of Lent. And this word, one of Jesus's last, was I thirst. I am thirsty. And I don't know about you, but this is one of the more shocking things for me to hear Jesus say from the cross. And it's so shocking because even though I know that Jesus is both fully human and fully divine, there's nothing that reveals his humanity nearly as much as this word. We know when Jesus says that he is thirsty, that he is truly human. It's a really common thing for people in their last moments, in their last days, as they are approaching death, to be thirsty and to say those same words as Jesus did, to say, I am thirsty. And if you have ever been with someone who is dying before, you'll notice that either you have the opportunity, or the hospice worker or the nurses who are working with them will take a little sponge on the end of a short stick, and they'll soak that sponge in the water. And then they'll touch that sponge to the patient's lips, just to wet their lips. They'll rub it around their teeth and their gums and on their tongue to wet their mouth. And oftentimes at this point they can't even swallow, but the presence of the water, the touching of the water to their tongue is so important. And this was a gesture that was offered to Jesus, right? They offered him something to drink on the cross, but he wouldn't receive it. It wasn't water. It was something that tasted bitter. And there's all kinds of thought. Some folks say it might have been poison. Some say it was something that may have numbed the pain. And that for whatever reason, he rejected it. But nonetheless, he was thirsty. And we know this because he expressed it. In all of his humanity from the cross, Jesus said, I thirst. And of all of the moments in which he revealed his humanity to us, this is probably the most profound. It's the one by which we know that when we suffer, Jesus has suffered with us, that he knows exactly what it means to suffer, and he knows all of the feelings that we feel when we die, because he expressed that from the cross. And I think the last thing that this really draws my mind to is that Jesus is also all of those who are suffering today. Jesus is also all of the vulnerable. Jesus is also today all who thirst. Right? In the Wesleyan tradition, we believe that God through Jesus located himself first with those who are the most vulnerable and with those who suffer the most. And Matthew 25 affirms that in fact Jesus is the ones who suffer. Jesus is those ones who thirst. And so our role as the church, as we are moved and inspired and filled by the grace of knowing that Jesus shares humanity with us, then we are also called to go and find Jesus and to find those who are hungry. We are also called to go and be with the vulnerable, with those who are uttering those words with Jesus, I thirst. We are called to go and do absolutely everything we possibly can to bring them that quenching water. But at the end of the day, we know that as important as that physical water is to our lives, we also remember another conversation that Jesus had about water with the woman at the well. Right? When he told her that the water from the well will quench a thirst, but the water that he offers, the living water, right, will never run dry. And so the great irony is that the one who thirsted from the cross is also the one who is the living well, the one who can offer us a drink from a well that will never run dry. So as we continue into this season of Lent, in this very bizarre time, may you soak up the water of Christ. May it fill you and nourish you. May it give you hope and sustenance. May it draw you deeper into love and relationship with Jesus and with all those whom you know and love and are with. Peace of Christ be with you, friends.